Hi, this is Justin Coletti of SonicScoop. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode of the SonicScoop podcast. And today I'm here to give you my top 3 takeaways from the masterclass from amazing mixer Michael Brauer. I like to refer to Michael as the mixing engineer's mixing engineer. This is a dude whose name is known by pretty much anyone who's been working in audio engineering, music production for any significant length of time. He's done critically acclaimed work for artists including Coldplay, Grizzly Bear, John Mayer, James Bay, Aerosmith, James Brown. The list just goes on and on. He's won a bunch of Grammys, including Best Engineering Grammys. And this is the kind of guy where when he talks, I listen, and so do so many other people. And I want to give you my top 3 takeaways from his very long, very interesting masterclass, about an hour long. We did another hour plus Q&A afterwards. You got to check those out here on the channel. But if you want the short Cliff's Note version, I will give you what I think are the 3 biggest takeaways. And I'll start diving into them right now. Big shout out real quick to our sponsors. Sound Toys, been sponsoring this podcast from the beginning. Try out anything they make for free for 30 days over at soundtoys.com. So big shout out to Steinberg, makers of the DAW's Cubase and Nuendo, along with Wavelab for mastering, Dorico for music notation, and some great hardware interfaces. Also, I'll give a quick shout out to Plugin Alliance because they were the ones who sponsored Michael Brauer's MixCon Masterclass, and he uses a ton of Plugin Alliance plugins all over that session. So here are the things that I want to get into. Number 1, Michael Brauer isn't too precious about his audio. I thought it was interesting, some of the comments we were getting in the live premiere that were coming in as it was going along. One of them was, hey, it sounds like he put on a compressor, or he put on a saturator, or he put on an EQ, and it got louder when he put it on. Shouldn't he go back and level match them and check it out and make sure that he's really making it sound better? And it's like, no. No, he probably shouldn't do that. I don't think Michael Brauer is spending a lot of time mixing, making something sound better, and then second guessing himself and saying, oh, did I really make that thing sound better? Or was it the level boosting that I did that made it sound better? Was it the saturation that I did? No, he just kind of does it and moves on. And this is one of my key takeaways as well from Jimmy Douglas's masterclass. And you'll find this, the more you study really experienced people who've been doing it again and again over long periods of time, is they cut down their second guessing of themselves to a minimum. And all 3 of these takeaways from Michael Brauer are going to really revolve around one idea, which is that he's really big into the emotional impact of the music and trying to bring the emotion out of the music. And that's a huge thing. And you don't do that by putting on your scientist hat while you're mixing. This isn't to say that Michael Brauer never level matches or he never takes a scientific approach to, evaluating pieces of gear. But when he's using tools, particularly that he already knows, he trusts his gut with them. He's already vetted them. He's already done the listening test on them, and he just goes. And if things sound better, they sound better. You don't have to backtrack to find out exactly which one of the moves you made was the thing and which ones, weren't the thing. You just got there and you keep going. But here's a second one that I think is a little bit more unique to Michael. Michael believes that the emotion comes from motion. So he likes to have his hands on faders. And this is a guy who has adapted to new technology again and again and again throughout his career. I mean, he's been doing this decades. But when new consoles came out that were better, he was on those. When it started to make more sense to go to a more hybrid digital/analog mixing approach, he went in that direction. Now, as things start to make more sense to go all in the box, he's going in that direction. But one thing he's never given up that entire time is mixing with faders. And a big part of his masterclass in the end, you can see him bringing a mix together in real time using his fingers. And again, I think all of these key takeaways, including the second one, focus around his interest in bringing the emotion out of a mix, and that being the most important thing. So he's not playing around with squiggly lines when he's doing his automation. He wants to get his hands on things and feel things. And I think that's important because you can get potentially good mixes without getting your hands on faders. But there's going to be a lot more second guessing and backtracking involved. You're going to have to go place the automation. We'll bring up the vocals by 0.6 dB in this section. And then you've got to ask yourself, well, should it have been 0.6 dB or should it have been 0.3 dB? Or should it have been 1.2 dB? And you've got to go back, listen again, see if the change you made sense. And when you're going back over again, it's a little easy to lose the thread and get taken out of the feeling your way through the music. And when you put your hands on the fader, it just goes there and you decide, is it too loud, too quiet? Okay, now we're in the right spot. Now I'm going to ride it a little bit as the track goes along. And I think a lot of his mixes have this life and this breathing to them because he's massaging things slightly as they go along and making those decisions there on the fly. And he's not backtracking again and again and again, trying to decide whether he made the right choice in the past. Sounds familiar, right? It's a little related to takeaway number 1. All right. Key takeaway number 3 from Michael Brauer's presentation. He relies hard on his assistant engineer. Fernando Reyes, his assistant, made some cameos in this presentation because there's so much back-end work that Fernando does so that Michael can just sit down and mix. And I think that's a crucial and important thing, is that he was really thankful, appreciative of his assistant, and he really talked about just how much his assistant does so that he can sit down and just do the creative part. So he wants to make sure that you understand that's a big part of the process, is getting the technical stuff out of the way so you can just be creative. Now, if you're your own assistant engineer, you can do this. And you can do this by separating the session setup part of your session from the mixing part of your session. You don't have to do them at the same time. You shouldn't be starting to mix and then finding yourself saying, oh, well, maybe I should go back and comp these takes, or, oh, maybe it's now time to edit this stuff, or, oh, maybe it's time to set up all of my routing for effects. No, do that stuff in advance, maybe even on a separate day. So when you come back to it, you can just sit down and mix and focus on being creative. If you want to work with an assistant engineer, you don't have to be booking, thousands upon thousands of dollars per mix to do that either. Maybe if you're booking $200 on a mix, there are some people out there who'd probably be excited to, for $20 or $40, do some session setup prep where they're putting things into a template and making sure that all of your routing is done in advance. And maybe if you're charging $800 for a mix, that scales up along with the rate. I actually have a whole episode on how these kinds of arrangements could work at every budget level, from if you're charging very, very little for a mix to a ton for a mix. There's ways to bring assistance into the process that, instead of costing you money, can make you more money. So definitely check out that episode of the podcast. I believe it's called something like Advice for Studio Assistants in the 21st Century, Why to Hire an Assistant, Coletti, SonicScoop podcast. Look up that kind of stuff and you will find that episode. It's a great one. Maybe I'll link to it in the show notes down here as well. So I think those are my 3 big takeaways from Michael. 1, not being too precious and always moving forward and keeping second guessing and backtracking to a minimum. Number 2, this idea of emotion coming from motion and automation being a hugely important part of the mix. And he does that in real time with fingers. And if you can get your hands even onto just one fader, you can do that style and approach as well, which I know Michael would recommend to you. And the number 3 thing, how heavily he relies on his assistant and how important it is for him to get the technical stuff out of the way first so he can just focus on being creative in the mix. I think those are 2 or 3 huge takeaways. If I was going to add in one more, it's that he actually does a lot of mixing on a boombox, which is pretty cool. And there's good reasons for that. Maybe we'll get into that deeper, or just check out the Q&A and the episode of the masterclass so that you can get Michael's insights for yourself. Oh, and of course, I'd be silly to talk this long about Michael Brauer without mentioning his Brauerized technique, where he has multiple buses, 4 of them really, where he feeds elements through them, and maybe drums and bass go to one bus and guitars go to another bus. It's called his Brauerizing technique. That is something that I actually have a whole podcast episode about. So it's a whole Q&A episode where we talk about the Brauerized concept. So if you want more detail on that, go check out that episode. I'll try to link to that one in the show notes down below as well. All right, I hope this has been a useful one for you. If you want to win thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of free gear, check out the MixCon Mega Giveaway at SonicScoop.com/MixCon Giveaway. That's SonicScoop.com/MixCon Giveaway. If you want more great insights from producers and engineers, there's a ton of MixCon out there and coming out. So definitely check out the SonicScoop YouTube channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you're here on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio-only version, please leave a 5-star rating and review. It really does help spread the word. Another thing we've got that really ties together the common threads between all of the great mixers that we've interviewed or had on for masterclasses at SonicScoop is my free workshop called The 5 Habits of Truly Great Mixers. You can get that at SonicScoop.com/mixhabits. That's SonicScoop.com/mixhabits. 40-minute workshop where we go over the things that pretty much every single one of these mixing engineers we've had on has in common. All right. I hope this has been a useful one for you. This has been Justin Coletti of SonicScoop. Big thanks to Sound Toys for sponsoring the podcast. As always, try out anything they make for free at soundtoys.com. Big thanks to Steinberg. Check them out at steinberg.net, makers of amazing DAWs like Cubase and Nuendo. Also, a big thanks to, let's shout out Plugin Alliance, because they sponsored the masterclass from Michael. He uses a ton of Plugin Alliance plugins in there. If you don't have their mega subscription bundle, you should probably get it. It's one of the best deals, in my humble opinion, in the whole pro audio world. All right, this has been Justin Coletti of SonicScoop. Thanks for hanging out with me. See you next time.